You may think of Taco Bell as, a place where drunk college kids go to detox after midnight, but the fast food chain has actually been doing some serious innovating in recent years behind the scenes. We're going to break down what the chain has done right to make things work. So, Rob and Mark, let's dive into our top story here. Rob, I want to break this down a little bit, but before I do this, just to recap some of the high-level stats here, Taco Bell has this innovation kitchen. They've got 12 chef scientists. They've got 60 food innovation developers. This is obviously, there's some magic happening behind the scenes at Taco Bell here.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think the coolest thing about this is you think of like an innovation kitchen as something that like some Michelin star restaurant would have, right? I think
Right.
You've broken down that like Shake Shack has one, and Shake Shack is kind of like the bougie, like affluent version of fast food.
For sure.
I think the kind of combination of Taco Bell, which I think most people look at as kind of like this lowbrow fast food player, and an innovation kitchen is just a really fun juxtaposition. And I think if you've been to Taco Bell at any time in the last couple of decades, you've probably seen some results of this innovation kitchen. They have really, really creative menu items. It's amazing.
Yeah, and we're sort of in a golden era of creative menu items, for better or worse. Some of them are a little kitschy, like Burger King's got a bacon sundae, Pizza Hut has hot dog stuffed crust, and KFC got some headlines for their fried chicken flavored nail polish, whatever that is. But over at Taco Bell, like, it's not just the kitsch. Like, people are actually enjoying their experimental items.
Totally. I mean, I think like the Crunchwrap Supreme, which we'll get to in a little bit, it's like an unbelievable innovation in Mexican cuisine. It's truly incredible. I've loved it for like 2 decades now. And I mean, you got that. I think Mark is probably going to chime in here in a minute. We were talking about the Frito burrito earlier. I mean, tons of amazing menu items have resulted from this kitchen. I had a buddy who used to go to Taco Bell literally all the time. And I think he actually applied. They had a job opening for, I think like either a food tester or somebody to work in their innovation kitchen. And he applied, and he was so bummed out when he didn't get it. I think these roles are actually really highly coveted because it sounds like such a fun job.
Yeah, of course. So let's break down some of the key components here. What is Taco Bell doing right?
So I think if you look at what Taco Bell's doing right, you're going to see a lot of strategies we would typically associate with like startups and stuff like that. So like one of the big ones is iteration. So Taco Bell annually releases 10 new products, but to get to those 10, their innovation lab scientists generate thousands of ideas and test about 70 of them. So we talked earlier about how this would be such a fun job. I mean, just think about that. You're literally running through thousands of ideas, trying to figure out which ones are actually viable, and then actually testing 70 new food items. Super, super cool. They're also extremely patient. So they don't just choose anything. I think you probably got that from the first bullet, but the Crunchwrap Supreme was tweaked in the lab for 13 years until it made the cut. And
that's so funny
I will
to
just
me
say,
for some reason.
Yeah, I will say that 13 years was worth it because it is a perfect fast food item. Not only does it taste amazing, it's actually really hard to spill it. Like its construction is perfect.
I can tell you're a connoisseur, Rob.
Yeah, it's a perfect fast food item, if I'm being honest. They also pay a ton of attention to detail. So scientific precision is lent to the ingredients' material properties, from bounce to juiciness, spring back to spreadability, and every ratio of all of their menu items is carefully considered, like how the balance of fats and acids impacts mouthfeel and brain chemistry. So these guys are actually thinking about that. If you have this kind of feeling after eating Taco Bell, like, man, I could really go for another one of those, that's probably because the Innovation Kitchen figured out exactly how to make you feel that way.
It's kind of creepy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there's a few other things they're doing here. They break convention. They really push the technical limits of what food can be. Like you mentioned, the composition of the crunch wrap not leaking or anything like that. And they also just, have a hyper focus on consumers. They're hyper aware of who their customers are and what they want. They play on things like nostalgia and emotion in their menu items.
One of my favorite things that they do too is they take kind of the logistics of their locations into consideration. So they have some practical constraints that they put into this that helps them kind of whittle down this list. Ultimately, they have to consider the cost, the quantity, and preparation of each of their new menu items, as well as the speed, and if it can be prepared in 1 minute. Like that's something that they take really seriously. I think we did a Sunday story on drive-through times, and Taco Bell was one of the fastest. And
right.
It's no surprise. They factor that into literally every new thing that they put on their menu.
Yeah, and all of this that we just mentioned has helped Taco Bell balloon into this $15 billion a year in annual sales chain that serves 42 million people every week. Obviously, fast food chains did very well during the pandemic. The drive-through model, other restaurants tried to sort of adapt to that. Mark, I want to bring you in here because you've written a lot about Pizza Hut's innovation and innovation in the pizza space. What kind of parallels are you seeing here?
Well, it's interesting. What I'm seeing is that the Taco Bell of the 2020s is the Pizza Hut of the 1990s, basically. And it's interesting because they're owned, both by the same parent organization, Yum, but Pizza Hut has not been doing nearly as much innovation. You mentioned like that hot dog stuffed crust pizza. So they kind of do these things that are just like extra touches on something that they used to do. Or I think they brought back the Big New Yorker not that long ago, which obviously that came out, I think, originally in the late 90s, maybe the mid 1990s. So in the 90s, I talked to several people from Pizza Hut. This was a couple years ago now, but they had like a similar kind of schedule and goals to what this Big New Yorker piece described about Taco Bell's kind of innovation setup, where they wanted to have a new invention come out every 6 to 8 weeks. And they would spend 18 months testing different kinds of pizzas. And they brought a whole lot of things to the fold that we take for granted as being very normal now, including like barbecue pizza and cheeseburger pizza, which are just kind of routine menu items, but they were essentially brand new, especially at scale in the 1990s. And then they came out with like the bigger things like the Sicilian, where they figured out a way to like make garlic like stay inside the crust, which involves some heavy engineering. And there was the Big New Yorker, which Donald Trump did the ad for, as people may remember, and stuffed crust, which changed the game entirely. But when you think about since then, they really haven't. What we've seen in the pizza space is like innovation when it comes to like delivery and just getting it to your house faster and making you feel better on its way to your house. And Domino's is much more of a leader in that than Pizza Hut. So I think it's like really impressive. And it shows, Taco Bell has become this juggernaut, like you were saying, $15 billion a year. And when you're coming out with new things and appealing to a wide range of customers, like it just makes a lot more sense. And, Pizza Hut's struggles over the last few years are pretty well known.
Yeah. It's interesting. When I read this story, my mind also immediately went to Shake Shack. We've written about innovation in different spaces as well. Shake Shack, Rob, like you said, it's like the bougie, fast casual chain. But a few years back in 2019, I went to Shake Shack's Innovation Kitchen in New York. It just looks like a regular restaurant from the outside. And then you walk in, you go down these stairs, and there's this giant industrial kitchen where these entrepreneurial-esque chefs are just making these experimental burgers and stuff. And it's really just a place where chefs are given free rein to experiment and create new items. They test them in hyper-local markets and do these little micro A/B tests with burgers. They see what works and they create these new things. And it seems like, in fast food, there's sort of this informal mantra right now. The bigger you get, the smaller you have to act. So you see a lot of Goliath chains sort of reverting back to a startup mentality and trying to get back to the roots of really creating new things.
Totally. And I mean, one thing that kind of shines through this piece is just how much fun this is. I think we had a piece a while back in the Sunday about how Flamin' Hot Cheetos were created. And that was a Sunday, right, Zach? Sorry, sidebar.
Yeah, I think so. But that story, by the way, had a few, that man's story has been called into question since then. So
Interesting. The bigger takeaway is that these ideas can come from anywhere. Like ideas for new cuisine, new flavors, like new mixes and new ways of blending menu items can literally come from anyone.
Yeah.
And I just think it's so cool to see Taco Bell innovating like this. When to your point earlier, and I guess Taco Bell's kind of doing it on both axes. Like we wrote about how Taco Bell has that like 2-floor restaurant concept where you drive through underneath and they use elevators to deliver your food. It seems like everybody else is kind of focused on logistics right now. Like you said about Domino's, like everybody just wants to get you your stuff fast and conveniently. But it's really cool to see Taco Bell kind of pushing the boundaries for what their menu can actually include.
They're keeping the American spirit alive. Innovation.
They really are.
Exactly.
Change. Yeah. And I don't mean to sound like a douche by saying this, but I don't know. There's just something kind of funny about this to me. Like that it takes 13 years to develop a Crunchwrap Supreme. And there's like a team of scientists, food scientists working around the clock to make this a special thing. Or, just like that Pizza Hut is seen as this technological savant, that has brought great leaps, technological advancement to delivery methods and things like that. You never really know where you're going to find true innovation. It kind of reminds me a bit, this is tangential, but like how, like Pornhub or something is considered this huge innovator in technology, like a lot of like great leaps in streaming technology come from like unexpected places like that.
Absolutely. It reminds me of I don't know if we have any Guy Fieri fans here, but Triple D, Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, it's obviously kind of like lowbrow, like serialized TV. But when you look at the business implications of diner, drive-ins, and dives, the places that they feature on there say that their sales pop by like double pretty much like regularly for years after they land on that show. So it's kind of just like this goofy concept, but then when he leaves, like their business is completely transformed. It's really wild. I love this. I love situations like this where you have kind of like this goofy brand and underneath it, there's some real kind of business genius going on.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, that's going to do it for us today, folks. Thanks for tuning into the Hustle Daily Show. We're a proud part of the HubSpot podcast network. We've got a lot more tech and business coverage for you over in our newsletter. If you're not subscribed, go get yourself signed up at thehustle.co/email. That's thehustle.co/email.